Libra is often labeled as indecisive, conflict avoidant, too nice, a classic people pleaser. In conversations about astrology, Libra is rarely positioned as the symbol of mental toughness. They are not the loudest in the room, not the quickest to confront, not the one who wins arguments by force. But what if that entire framing is wrong? What if indecision is sometimes careful evaluation? What if avoiding escalation is emotional control rather than weakness? What if people-pleasing in certain contexts is actually advanced social awareness? Recently, many astrology blogs and pop astrology sources have suggested that Libra may actually be mentally stronger than most signs. But instead of glorifying that claim, this video takes a closer look. Stronger in what way? Why are they so often misunderstood? And where does this idea start to lose nuance? We will examine three main angles: the gap between stereotype and reality, the specific traits that could signal mental strength in Libra, and how those traits compare with psychological concepts like resilience and emotional regulation. In this video, we are not asking whether Libra is perfect. We are asking a harder question: could Libra's calm balance and self-control represent a form of mental strength that many people overlook? The phrase mentally stronger than most signs immediately creates tension. It sounds comparative, competitive, almost hierarchical. And when astrology touches identity, comparison can feel personal. Part of the controversy comes from how differently people define mental strength. For some, mental strength means tolerating extreme pressure without breaking. For others, it means not being ruled by emotion. Some define it as bouncing back quickly after disappointment or loss. Others associate it with decisiveness, firmness, and the refusal to back down. Under that last definition especially, Libra does not always look strong. Libra is not typically confrontational. They are rarely aggressive in debates. They often pause instead of reacting instantly. In a culture that equates strength with directness and dominance, that pause can be misread as weakness. But mental strength is not a single trait. It is a cluster of capacities. In this analysis, we will define mental strength in 4 dimensions: composure under stress, emotional regulation, cognitive balance in decision-making, and social resilience during interpersonal tension. When viewed through this broader lens, Libra becomes a far more interesting case. Their strength may not appear in their first reaction. It may appear in what they choose not to do, what they refuse to escalate, and how they stabilize situations after the initial emotional wave passes. And this is where the conversation begins to shift. Because Libra's strength is rarely loud, it is often structural. Libra is frequently described with a predictable set of labels: indecisive, avoidant of confrontation, too nice, people-pleasing, image-conscious. On the surface, none of these traits align with the popular image of mental toughness. Modern culture often celebrates a very specific version of strength: fast decisions, sharp boundaries, direct speech, winning arguments, cutting through noise without hesitation. Strength in this narrative is loud, decisive, and sometimes intimidating. Libra rarely performs strength that way. When a Libra hesitates, it is often interpreted as weakness. Yet hesitation can also signal that multiple variables are being considered. Libra tends to weigh fairness, long-term consequences, and the emotional impact on others before committing. That process takes time. When a Libra avoids conflict, it is easy to assume fear, but sometimes avoidance is strategic de-escalation. Not every disagreement needs to become a battle. Not every emotional spike needs to be matched. Choosing not to inflame a situation can be a deliberate act of control. When Libra appears to people please, there are 2 possibilities. One is unhealthy self-abandonment. The other is high social awareness. Libra often reads the room, carefully adjusting tone and language to maintain stability. This can be a skill, though it becomes problematic if personal boundaries disappear. It is important to stay balanced here. Libra can overthink. Libra can delay decisions. Libra can struggle with drawing firm lines. Those are real vulnerabilities. But reacting strongly is not the same as having strong inner regulation. Many people confuse intensity with resilience. Sometimes the person who appears calm is not weak. They are processing more than you can see. If we move beyond the stereotype, a different pattern begins to emerge. Libra's mental strength is rarely about dominance. It is about regulation. It is not about overpowering others. It is about not being overpowered by the moment. We can call this quiet mental strength. Quiet mental strength does not require visible intensity to prove itself. It does not need to win every confrontation. Instead, it shows up as clarity under emotional noise restraint when others react impulsively, and the ability to keep perspective when tension rises. Libra's archetype is the scale. Balance is not passivity, it is calibration. Libra instinctively scans for imbalance. Too much emotion, too much aggression, too much bias, too much self-interest. Their reflex is not to escalate, but to correct. This is where composure becomes power. In chaotic environments, Libra often stabilizes. They observe first. They assess tone, body language, and unspoken dynamics. They do not rush to take a side until they understand the structure of the conflict. This restraint is frequently misread as indecision, but cognitively it reflects tolerance for complexity. It is important to clarify something. Libra is not strong because they feel nothing. They are strong when they feel deeply, but choose their response carefully. Emotional regulation does not mean emotional absence. It means emotion processed rather than projected. There are two common expressions of strength. Loud strength reacts quickly, asserts dominance, and makes control visible. Quiet strength regulates pace, preserves logic, protects dialogue, and maintains connection. When mental strength is defined narrowly as stubbornness or aggression, Libra does not stand out. But when it includes composure, balance, and relational intelligence, Libra becomes compelling. And this is only the framework. The real question is, in what specific ways does this quiet strength show up in practice? One Libra maintains composure under pressure. One of the most repeated observations about Libra is their composure. When tension rises, Libra often does not react with their first emotional impulse. Instead, there is a visible pause. They observe the tone of the room. They assess the stakes. They try not to make the situation worse. In heated discussions, the person who stays calm can initially appear disengaged or weak because they are not performing intensity. They are not dramatizing. They are not escalating. But psychologically maintaining composure requires self-control. It requires tolerating discomfort without immediately discharging it. In many high-stress environments, the person who regulates their reaction stabilizes the entire interaction. They reduce emotional chain reactions. They create space for solutions. Of course, composure can become suppression if emotions are never expressed. But in balanced form, this is a strong indicator of self-regulation. When others are reacting, Libra is often adjusting. Two Libra thinks in multiple angles at once. What is often labeled as indecision may actually be multidimensional thinking. Libra tends to weigh both sides, right and wrong benefit and cost, short-term gain and long-term consequence, personal need and collective impact. This type of cognitive processing consumes mental energy. In a world that rewards quick answers, slowing down to evaluate complexity can look inefficient. Yet mental strength includes the ability to tolerate ambiguity. Libra is often comfortable sitting in gray areas. They resist oversimplify solutions when the situation is layered. In a group conflict, for example, Libra may hesitate to pick a side immediately. They are not always confused. Sometimes they are gathering the full picture before committing. Enduring uncertainty without rushing toward certainty is a form of maturity. Libra is not always unable to choose. Often they are unwilling to reduce a complex issue into a simplistic binary. 3 Libras, diplomatic conflict handling. Mental strength is not only about enduring hardship alone. it is also about navigating relational tension. Libra frequently shows resilience in social dynamics. They tend to read emotional undercurrents accurately. They choose language carefully to minimize triggers. They aim to preserve dignity for all parties involved. They often position themselves as mediators. This role is not easy. The person in the middle of a conflict risks criticism from both sides. To tolerate that pressure without collapsing into defensiveness requires stability. Libra's social composure and relational resilience are often underestimated because diplomacy looks softer than confrontation. Yet genuine dialogue requires ego management. It requires listening. It requires absorbing tension without personalizing every reaction. Avoiding fake harmony is weakness. Creating real dialogue is strength. For Libra, uses structured cognitive coping. When faced with stress, Libra often shifts into analysis mode. Instead of staying in raw emotional reaction, they begin comparing options, calculating trade-offs, and searching for the most balanced solution. This approach reflects cognitive coping strategies. Rather than being consumed by who is right, Libra often asks, what outcome reduces damage? Or what solution preserves fairness? That shift from emotional reactivity to structured problem solving is linked to resilience in psychological research. It allows a person to move from chaos toward clarity. In work conflicts, deadline pressure, or misunderstandings with friends, Libra often reframes the problem structurally. They want resolution, but not just any resolution. They want proportional, fair resolution. They do not simply want the tension to end. They want it to end in a way that makes sense. 5. Libra does not need to win every battle. Another overlooked aspect of mental strength is selective engagement. Libra is often less concerned with winning every argument and more concerned with preserving long-term equilibrium. This can be misinterpreted as passivity, yet there is a difference between backing down out of fear and consciously choosing not to escalate. Libra frequently prioritizes long-term relationship quality over short-term ego satisfaction. They evaluate whether a confrontation is worth the cost. Sometimes they choose silence, not because they are defeated, but because the outcome is not strategically valuable. The ability to delay gratification of ego is a marker of psychological maturity. Libra often chooses which battles matter. Not every silence is weakness. Some silences are deliberate control. To keep this discussion fair, it is necessary to acknowledge the limitations. If we only describe Libra as mentally stronger than most signs, without examining vulnerabilities, the analysis becomes praise rather than insight. Libra's tendency to analyze multiple angles can become overthinking. Instead of clarifying decisions, excessive weighing of options can lead to paralysis. Decision fatigue is real. When every outcome is examined for fairness and consequence, mental energy drains quickly. Composure can also turn into emotional suppression. If Libra consistently prioritizes harmony over authenticity, unresolved feelings accumulate. Avoiding necessary confrontation may preserve short-term peace, but create long-term instability. People-pleasing is another risk. The ability to read a room and maintain balance is powerful, but if it comes at the cost of personal boundaries, mental strength erodes. External validation can quietly replace internal conviction. Conflict avoidance, when habitual, allows problems to grow. Delayed conversations often become heavier conversations, and because Libra values image and perception, criticism can sometimes penetrate deeper than they show outwardly. These weaknesses do not cancel out Libra's strengths. They reveal where the strength requires reinforcement. Libra is at their strongest when balance is paired with decisiveness, when diplomacy is paired with boundaries, and when composure does not silence personal truth. Their gift is maintaining equilibrium. Their challenge is maintaining it without losing themselves. In pop astrology, phrases like mentally stronger than most signs are often used broadly. They are symbolic. They capture patterns, not guarantees. But in psychology, mental strength is not a single trait, nor is it fixed by personality alone. Concepts such as resilience, emotional regulation, Coping strategies and distress tolerance are distinct constructs. Resilience does not mean always staying calm. It does not mean never feeling hurt. It does not mean being born unshakable. Resilience is adaptive. It shifts depending on context, experience, learned skills, support systems, and environment. A person may show strong emotional regulation in relationships, but struggle under professional pressure. Mental strength is situational and developmental. When astrology describes Libra as mentally strong, it is often pointing to symbolic tendencies, composure, balance-seeking relational awareness, and cognitive processing before reaction. These tendencies can support resilience, but they are not automatic immunity to stress. It is more accurate to say that Libra as an archetype is associated with traits that align with certain dimensions of mental strength. That is different from claiming that every Libra is stronger than every other sign. This distinction matters. It prevents absolute statements. It respects both symbolic language and psychological nuance. Astrology can offer a framework for reflection. It can highlight patterns and strengths, but it should not replace critical thinking or individualized understanding of human behavior. Mental strength is not a fixed badge assigned at birth. It is a skill set developed and refined over time. Whether you are a Libra or not, there are practical skills embedded in what we might call Libra-style mental strength. First, pause before reacting. Even 5 to 10 seconds can interrupt an impulsive response. That small delay can shift an emotional reaction into a deliberate one. Second, name both sides of a conflict. Acknowledge your position, but also articulate the other person's perspective. This reduces defensiveness and increases clarity. Third, protect both the relationship and your boundary. Balance does not mean self-erasure. You can say, I understand how you feel, but I need to be clear about what works for me. Fourth, choose timing, not just truth. Being right is not always the same as being effective. A well-timed conversation often has more impact than a perfectly phrased argument delivered in the wrong emotional moment. For example, instead of escalating, you might say, the goal here is to solve the problem, not to win against each other. These are transferable skills. They are not exclusive to Libra, but they reflect the kind of composed, balanced response often associated with this archetype. So the final question becomes unavoidable. Is Libra truly mentally stronger than most signs? If mental strength is defined only as intensity dominance or the ability to overpower others in confrontation, Libra may not immediately stand out. They are not usually the loudest voice. They are not driven by the need to win every exchange. But if mental strength includes composure under stress, emotional regulation, multidimensional thinking, diplomatic resilience, and the ability to choose responses consciously, then Libra becomes far more compelling. Their strength is often quiet. It shows in the pause before reacting, in the effort to understand both sides, in the refusal to let chaos dictate behavior, in the decision to protect long-term stability over short-term ego. Libra may not always be the most visibly forceful sign, but they are frequently among the most structurally steady. They hold tension without collapsing into extremes. They aim for proportion when others polarize. Perhaps the greatest strength of Libra is not defeating others. It is not letting disorder take away their clarity. So what do you think? Is Libra indecisive or simply unwilling to reduce complex situations into simplistic choices? Leave your perspective in the comments.